Sunni Islam. Sunni Islam is the largest branch of the faith, comprising roughly 85 to 90% of all Muslims worldwide. Sunnis derive their name from the Arabic phrase Ahl al-Sunnah, meaning the people of the tradition, referring to the Sunnah, the recorded sayings and practices of the Prophet Muhammad. After the Prophet's death, Sunnis accepted Abu Bakr as the rightful first caliph, chosen through community consensus rather than bloodline. This principle, that leadership belongs to the most qualified rather than the most closely related, remains central to Sunni thought. Sunni theology developed four major schools of Islamic law called madhabs, each using a slightly different methodology for deriving religious rulings from scripture. Hanafi School. The Hanafi School is the oldest of the four Sunni legal schools and historically the most widely practiced. It was founded by the scholar Abu Hanifa in 8th century Iraq. Hanafi jurisprudence places significant weight on analogical reasoning and scholarly opinion, allowing for more flexibility when scripture does not provide an explicit ruling. This adaptability made the Hanafi school the preferred choice of successive Islamic empires, and it remains dominant across Central Asia, South Asia, and much of the Middle East. Maliki School. The Maliki School was founded by Malik ibn Anas, a scholar based in Medina. It is distinctive in treating the collective practice of the people of Medina during the early Islamic period as a legal source in its own right, alongside the Quran and Hadith. The reasoning is that Medina was the city of the Prophet, and its early community's consensus preserved authentic practice. The Maliki School is the dominant tradition across North Africa and much of sub-Saharan Africa. Shafi'i School. The Shafi'i School was established by Muhammad al-Shafi'i, who is credited with formalizing the science of Islamic legal methodology. Al-Shafi'i insisted on a strict hierarchy of legal sources, the Quran first, then authenticated Hadith, then analogical reasoning. He was skeptical of local community practice as a source of law, which put him in tension with the Maliki tradition. The Shafi'i School is prevalent across East Africa, the Arabian Peninsula, and much of Southeast Asia. Hanbali School. The Hanbali School was founded by Ahmad ibn Hanbal, a scholar who endured imprisonment for refusing to adopt state-imposed theological positions. The school is the most textualist of the four, insisting on the closest possible reading of the Quran and Hadith, and treating independent legal reasoning with deep suspicion. Hanbali thought has historically been the least widespread of the four schools, but it became enormously influential in the modern period through its connection to Salafi and Wahhabi movements. Salafi Islam. Salafi Islam is a reform movement within Sunni Islam that calls for a return to the beliefs and practices of the Salaf, the first three generations of Muslims. Salafis argue that centuries of accumulated theology, local custom, and legal opinion have distorted the original faith, and that these additions must be stripped away. A distinct current known as Wahhabism emerged from 18th century Arabia through the teachings of Muhammad ibn Abd al-Wahhab, who formed an alliance with the ruler Muhammad ibn Saud. Wahhabi doctrine shares the Puritan Salafi orientation, but has been particularly associated with a strict, literalist application of religious law. The broader Salafi movement is politically diverse, ranging from quietist scholars who avoid politics entirely to activist and, in a small fringe, militant tendencies. Shia Islam. Shia Islam is the second largest branch of the faith, accounting for roughly 10 to 15% of Muslims worldwide. The word Shia means partisans or followers, referring to the followers of Ali ibn Abi Talib, the Prophet's cousin and son-in-law. After the Prophet's death, Shias held that Ali was the rightful leader of the Muslim community, a position that was passed over in favor of Abu Bakr. This dispute over succession is the foundational difference between Sunni and Shia Islam. Shias believe that the rightful leaders of the Muslim community, called imams, inherit divinely guided authority through the Prophet's bloodline. The Shia then divided further over disagreements about which descendants held this authority and how many imams there were before the line ended. Twelver Shia. Twelver Shia Islam is by far the largest branch of Shia Islam. Twelvers recognize a line of 12 imams, beginning with Ali and ending with Muhammad al-Mahdi, who is believed to have entered a state of occultation in the 9th century. The hidden Imam is expected to return at the end of time. In his absence, Twelver Shia tradition has vested religious authority in senior scholars, a structure that produced influential clerical hierarchies in the modern era. Twelver Shia theology places strong emphasis on the suffering of the Imams, and the martyrdom of Hussein ibn Ali at Karbala in 680 is the central commemorative event of the Twelver religious calendar. Ismaili Islam. Ismaili Islam is sometimes called Sevener Shia because Ismailis recognize only 7 Imams. The split from the Twelver mainstream occurred over the succession to the 6th Imam, Jafar al-Sadiq. Ismailis recognized Jafar's son Ismail as the next Imam rather than his younger son Musa, whom Twelvers follow. Ismaili theology developed a sophisticated philosophical tradition, emphasizing esoteric and allegorical interpretations of scripture alongside its outward meaning. The Nizari Ismailis, the largest surviving Ismaili community, are led by a living Imam, a lineage currently held by the Aga Khan, who is considered a direct descendant of the Prophet. Zaydi Islam. Zaydi Islam is sometimes called Fiver Shia. Zaydi separated from the mainstream over the question of the 5th Imam, supporting Zayd ibn Ali rather than his brother Muhammad al-Baqir. Zaydis rejected the concept of a hidden Imam and held instead that any descendant of the Prophet who rose to lead the community through active resistance to injustice could qualify as Imam. Zaydi jurisprudence is closer to the Sunni Hanafi and Shafi'i schools than to Twelver Shia law, and Zaydis do not hold the elevated theological status of the Imam that is central to Twelver doctrine. Ibadi Islam. Ibadi Islam is neither Sunni nor Shia. It descends from the Kharijiti movement, the earliest political faction in Islamic history, which held that any Muslim could become caliph regardless of tribe or family. The Ibadis broke from the main Kharijiti current by rejecting the doctrine that Muslims who commit grave sins automatically leave the faith. Ibadi theology emphasizes moderation and accessibility. Ibadis believe the leader of the Muslim community should be selected by qualified scholars based on merit and piety, not ancestry or conquest. Ibadism predates the Sunni and Shia labels and considers itself a continuation of early mainstream Islam before those divisions formed. Alawite Islam. Alawite Islam is a highly syncretic tradition with roots in Shia Islam, emerging in 10th century Syria. Alawite theology incorporates elements drawn from Neoplatonism and pre-Islamic religious traditions of the region. Alawites believe in a divine triad and hold that souls pass through cycles of reincarnation before reaching their final state. Much of Alawite doctrine has historically been held in secret, passed only to initiated members. Most Sunni and Shia scholars consider Alawites to be outside Orthodox Islam, while Alawites have historically identified as a branch of Shia. The tradition has no organized religious hierarchy of the kind found in mainstream Islamic institutions. Ahmadiyya. Ahmadiyya is a movement that arose in 19th century British India, founded by Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, who claimed to be the promised Messiah, the Mahdi, and a subordinate prophet within Islam. This last claim is the decisive point of controversy. Mainstream Islamic theology holds that Muhammad was the final and seal of all prophets, and that no prophethood can follow his. Because Ahmadis accept the prophethood of their founder, they are considered non-Muslim by most Islamic religious authorities and by several governments. Ahmadis consider their movement a revival and completion of authentic Islam and follow the Quran and the Prophet's practice as they understand it. The community has faced significant legal persecution and violence across several countries. Quranist Islam. Quranist Islam holds that the Quran alone is sufficient as a source of religious guidance. Quranists reject the Hadith, the collected sayings and actions of the Prophet, as a binding religious authority. Their argument is that the Hadith were compiled centuries after the Prophet's death, are subject to fabrication and error, and have introduced doctrines and practices not found in the Quran itself. Quranists do not have a formal organization or a founding figure. The position has emerged independently among Muslim thinkers across different periods and regions. Quranists represent a very small minority within Islam globally, but they have a visible presence in online scholarly debate. Nation of Islam. The Nation of Islam is an American religious and political movement founded in Detroit in 1930 by Wallace Fard Muhammad. It uses Islamic vocabulary and symbolism while advancing doctrines that diverge fundamentally from Orthodox Islam. Nation of Islam theology includes a racial cosmology in which white people were created by a scientist named Yaqub through a selective breeding program, and it teaches that Wallace Fard Muhammad was a divine incarnation. Mainstream Muslim scholars universally consider the Nation of Islam to be outside Orthodox Islam. The movement produced major figures in 20th century American history, including Malcolm X, who later converted to Sunni Islam after breaking with the Nation. The movement later fragmented, with one branch led by Warith Deen Muhammad moving toward mainstream Sunni practice. Druze. The Druze began as a breakaway movement from Ismaili Islam in 11th century Egypt, centered on the belief that the Fatimid Caliph al-Hakim bi Amr Allah was a manifestation of the divine. Al-Hakim disappeared in 1021, and Druze theology holds that he will return. Since the 11th century, the Druze community has been entirely closed. No converts are accepted, and no member may leave. Druze theology incorporates Neoplatonic, Gnostic, and other philosophical traditions to a degree that places it far outside any Islamic framework. Most Islamic scholars, and the Druze themselves, regard the Druze as a separate religion rather than a branch of Islam. The community has maintained a distinct identity across 1,000 years by separating religious knowledge into an inner doctrine known only to initiates and an outer life accessible to all members. Sufism. Sufism is not a sect in the conventional sense. It is a mystical dimension of Islam practiced within both Sunni and Shia traditions. Sufis seek a direct personal experience of the divine through devotional practices, including meditation, ritual chanting, controlled breathing, and in some orders, movement and music. Sufi practice is organized into brotherhoods called tariqas, each following a chain of teachers traced back to an early Islamic master and ultimately to the Prophet. Major orders include the Qadiriyya, the Naqshbandiyya, the Chishtiya, and the Mevlevi order associated with the poet Rumi. Salafi and Wahhabi movements strongly oppose Sufi practices as innovations that have no basis in the Quran or Hadith. Sufism has historically been one of the primary means through which Islam spread into new regions, carried by wandering teachers rather than armies or states. Thanks for watching. Which branch of Islam do you practice? Or which one were you most surprised to learn about? Let me know down below. Also, please remember to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video.